Today's video, we're going to talk about the ridiculous starting blocks that's going on behind the gate. Some cool stuff that I saw, riding ability comparison between RPMs, and also some starting technique. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification icon. To start off, we have Deegan. This was the first one that I noticed. I mean, Honda, they have it, and a lot of other guys are running massive starting blocks, and the fabrication on them is super cool. However, they are tied down with bungees because these are actually being used to push off, which definitely there is some data behind this, or else factory riders would not be using this, but it seems a little ridiculous at this point to be letting this stuff happen, because Deegan, it is as tall as his foot peg, and he's a little bit of a shorter rider, so I get needing a little bit of some starting blocks, but already with how pushed down the front forks are, I would like to see this stuff go away. This, to me, is something to where it's not considered cheating. It's just silly, in my opinion, because at this point, we might as well just have special fairings and auto ride stuff where it instantly goes, like MotoGP. And they already have these crazy maps to help them with the RPMs, but I digress. Deegan is literally pushing off of this. That's why we've got this little thing that's built up here. He doesn't need to have his foot in between the foot peg and the shifter and the brake because of this, where you'll see other guys, they stick their legs in between, and I'll show, like you have Mosman here where he's using this to push off of rather than Deegan is using the block itself to push off, and it's not going to move because of the bungee. And honestly, potentially there could go something wrong where the bungee snaps and these things move, and you know, that would mess up the rider as well. But look at how tall that is. That is crazy. And yeah, I guess he still has the foot peg there to help a little bit, but you know, in the comments, okay, you've got Gas, you know, Rider D doing the same thing, and I'm assuming probably the next couple weeks he'll probably even have the cool little lip that's built onto him. But they're getting taller and taller, and this has only been 6 months since I've seen some of the crazy starting blocks, because you see all sorts from, like, this almost seems, why even bother, to okay, understandable, to ridiculous, to oh, that's kind of cool, you know, different take on it. But here we'll go over Tomac, and you see Tomac, first off, you can see that he is riding with his heels in between the foot peg and the shifters, and same thing with Justin Cooper. What I did notice was his blocks are further behind than Justin's, and honestly, his starting technique was probably the most different that I've seen in a while, and even Cooper's doing a little bit of it as well. But look at this. He puts it in first, and then look at how he is engaging his core, and he's squeezing with his glutes and his hamstrings and his quads, and also, you know, pushing off of his foot pegs here. This is a solid state. So that motorcycle that we know is probably one of the most aggressive maps and motor builds of the entire field. In order for him to hold on to that bike, yeah, I could see him having to engage all this. But if I was to go over there and try to push him over, I probably couldn't. You know, probably somebody running at him couldn't push him over because of how just solid he is in this moment. And you know, I found it interesting that he's got his elbows down, so it's just engaging everything, and he's squeezing. You know, he's probably squeezing onto the bars as well. His forearms are probably locked as well. So watch what he does here. And that is the least power we see Tomac's bike sound, at least. The least aggressive, and it's because of the maps that they have for these starting bikes. Then if I go over to a more traditional starting technique, you have Hunter here, and he's going to go into first gear as well, but his elbows are up. you can see him leaned way forward where Tomac was leaned, you know, where his chin was not over the crossbar. And then you have Hunter where he is over the crossbar. He's really trying to unweight that rear wheel. And because these bikes are so strong and this is so sticky, these bikes are going to just haul ass and instantly wheelie over if you don't have a lot of weight on the front end. And so that's why I found it very interesting on Tomac's technique versus just the traditional. But notice, you know, you literally don't see any sort of different map blinking or anything for the Hondas, or I should have had a better look at Cooper's and Tomac's bike, because what we did see with Mosman is he definitely had a somewhat of a start map going. And when I talked to like Factory KTM and some other teams, they said, nope, we just have just one map. And I'm like, well, what about for the starting? Does it auto tune itself with that low RPM when it's in first gear or what? And they wouldn't tell me, which, you know, makes perfect sense. But if we watch Mosman here, he's got that same technique where he's got his heels behind the, well, in front of the foot peg so that he can squeeze with his knees, and he's got his elbows up and he'll pop it into first gear and then lean way forward to keep that front wheel down. And do you notice how big of a grip of throttle that they use? Okay, so this is interesting, is watch his right elbow. And this is something that everybody should be doing, is you take a big grip of that throttle so that when he turns it and dumps the clutch, boom, he's almost wide open. But do you see how his elbow falls back in line with the other one? Where if he was to not grab as big of a grip, his elbow would instantly drop. So that's something that I would like to see everybody practice as well, is take a big handful so that elbow does not drop. Small segue to Coach Rob's custom blended energy fuel. He's got a lot of different ones. I love this one because it's for races of 1 to 3 hours, and it's got plenty of calories in it, along with electrolytes and carbs that give you everything, because the worst thing you can do is deplete yourself of carbs. We are now knowing that with exercise, you need around 40 to almost a little bit over 100, depending upon how hard you're pushing per hour. And so I'm going to use this stuff at my Ironman this weekend. I love it. Go to CoachRobStore.com. My favorite flavor is the pink lemonade. And honestly, I do like, you know, watermelon, but it looks like he's got mocha here too, so I got to check that out too. This was incredibly interesting, but it makes perfect sense. Is after the parade laps, you saw mechanics putting in extra gas, and with talking with people, this stuff is cooled as well. So not only are they topping off the gas after the parade lap so that they don't run out because they're doing 35 minutes, but they're also putting in colder fuel so that it just a couple temperatures difference will make it to where these bikes can withstand the heat. Just it's trying to cool down the rest of the gas that's in there. And it's funny because we saw bikes like Deegan's and Mosman and the Star Yamaha guys somewhat die on them, and the race itself isn't that hot. We're at altitude, which stresses out the motorcycles, but really what it is these guys are overriding their clutch, and they're at such low gears that it's just putting a lot of stress on the inner workings of the motor itself. So they're trying to keep everything cool by putting in colder fuel, which is pretty dang cool. Everyone has these little bottles. I wonder, maybe could you get away with like putting something in the bottle that like shouldn't be there? You know, I find that maybe, you know, if you're wanting to tread that fine line, you possibly could. And here, this is Tom Vial, and what we notice is them coming down these big hills is you can see how much that they are pointing their toes inwards. Okay, so they don't have their toes out during these big deep ruts because they don't want one of these ruts to grab them and then twist their knees and there's an ACL, MCL, there's something. All the riders I saw is when they were coming down these big deep hills, they had their toes pointed inwards. Okay, we'll watch some more riders. Boom, toes pointed inwards. And it also helps having your toes pointed inwards where it's forcing you, if you're in sort of that attack position where you're bent down. Here, let me give a good position. So this is that same corner, and he's coming down these massive braking bumps, but you can see that he's not completely on his toes, so he's able to access that rear brake, but he's in this perfect attack position with his toes pointed inwards. And when you're in this position with your toes pointed inwards, don't have them out like this, have them inwards, you're able to apply more pressure onto the motorcycle to grip. And I love how when he's deaccelerating, he's leaning back almost to where his elbows are straight back. This is relieving pressure from his forearms. So if you are getting arm pump a lot, you need to be doing this when you're braking, is you push way back on the motorcycle to where you're almost extending the arms and they can just kind of sit there. You're not fighting inertia at that point because the motorcycle is deaccelerating and fighting against gravity and other pressures because it's deaccelerating. But then you pushing back on it, you're able to stay nice and loose and able to ride over the bump. So if I look at him, watch as he's coming in here, he's way back, and that motorcycle is able to flow over all these bumps. And you can see that it's hitting his rear, but you know, he's a tall enough rider that he's able to soak all this stuff up. And what he does do is he coasts quite a bit. I asked him a question about it. I heard him coasting, and I'll get into that next about we can literally hear his motorcycle around the track. In these next clips, I want you to pay attention to what you're hearing between the differences in the way the RPMs are for Jet's motorcycle and Tomac's motorcycle. This is on the back side of the track, and Jet's coming up first. Okay, here's coming into the corner right before around the middle of the track. Tomac comes in there and instantly is wide open when he's into the rut. And here we can hear him double clutching it. Okay, did you hear that? And we'll watch Jet do it. Just a simple roll. Oh, this is really pronounced. The last part of the track right before the finish line. And there's Tomac, and he's hitting that so hard. Okay, I thought this was pretty cool. He's hitting this rut up at the top so fast. Watch him right here. He literally jumps over the corner. Boom. He hits it so fast that it's jumping, but you literally hear his motor. Okay. It's just wide open where Jet is just cruising. And Tomac was taking a little bit different techniques on stuff where you saw Jet here, he's sitting down throughout the entire corner, okay? And if we watch Tomac come through, these guys are kind of dragging their rear brake a little bit to the exit. He stands up, okay? Look at it. He entered standing up, okay? Tomac enters standing up, and he doesn't sit down until he's ready to accelerate. Boom. Sits down. Now he's ready to get through there. And yes, I apologize for the graininess. All my coverage is 4K, and so I'm going to have to do some technical stuff to get it to where I can show you guys this live. I'm going to have to find a little bit different programs in order to do that. Here, if we watch that same corner with Hymas and Deegan, okay, boom, there's Hymas, and he's dragging that rear brake almost to the end. Okay, he decides to get off of it as soon as he pivots and he's ready to start accelerating. But he was dragging the rear brake around 60% of the corner. And when we watch Deegan, okay, Deegan is going to do the same thing. It's almost like he's been riding a lot with Tomac, because watch what he does is he comes in here, stands up all the way, and then sits down and gets off of it. You know, I found it interesting that he was using it as a foot peg standing up around the entire corner, though. You know, he was standing up, but then as soon as he sits down, boom, he releases the foot from the foot peg and the rear brake so that he's able to use the power. You know, that's part of the reason why I feel like this motorcycle got hot too, is you're just loading everything. You're letting the rotors get hot. You're clutching it. So you're letting the motor, you know, just be under massive amounts of stress, where riders like Jet and Hymus are just off the brakes, coasting a little bit, where these guys are locking the brakes really hard on the gas and clutching it. And yeah, the motors normally can handle that. But the last bit here is, this was super cool by what I saw Hymus and Deegan do coming down the far end of the track. Is there's a giant hole here, and you can literally see, watch Deegan as he comes through here, boom, and they wheelie over it. They accelerate and wheelie over it, boom, so that they don't get caught in it. Just something simple that just the pros do. Okay, comes in here. He should be braking, but now he's going to lift that front wheel, accelerate, get over the massive hole, land, then just coast off. Well done. Hey, if this was helpful at all, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Till next time, this is Johnny Hopper. Bra-da-da-da-da.